Imola in the sunshine, Ferrari red on pole position. This San Marino Grand Prix would seem to have everything that makes Formula One so glamorous and so fascinating. It's round 4 of the Formula One World Championship, and we'll join Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thanks, Steve. The story so far: Fernando Alonso takes advantage of the fact that Renault has the best prepared car for the start of the season, and he takes 28 points from a maximum of 30 in the opening 3 races. Championship rivals McLaren, Honda and Ferrari are left fuming as they seem unable to get the most out of their car and tyre packages. They must not allow Alonso to consolidate his early points lead as he did last year, scampering away to the championship. They need a turnaround. And so we come to Imola, traditionally a strong track for Ferrari and Bridgestone tyres, the first European race of the season and the start of a sequence of 4 Grand Prix in a month. Ferrari, McLaren and Honda cannot win the World Championship over this next 4 races, but they can certainly do an awful lot to lose it if they let Alonso control things the way he's done in the opening 3 flyaway Grand Prix: Bahrain, Malaysia and Australia. Well, Ferrari has responded magnificently with a raft of changes to their car and engine, which certainly have given them an extra half a second a lap in performance. Michael Schumacher there exploiting it to the absolute maximum. The wily old dog on his 15th start in the San Marino Grand Prix. Bridgestone too, as I mentioned, has the tyre to get the job done here. And what can this guy do from 5th place on the grid? Slower than everybody expected him to be in qualifying yesterday. But the thing, Martin, about Fernando Alonso, just looking at all the data, is every single start he moves forward. In Bahrain, he moved forward 2 places off the grid. Malaysia, he went 4 places forward in the opening corner, and a place in Australia as well. So from 5th on the grid, he just has this knack of making things come to him, doesn't he?
He's going to need to today, though, and of course Fisichella even more so back in the 11th place, presumably with the optimum strategy on board anyway for fuel. But what is that if you can't get past the other cars? And Alonso really's got to make a lot of ground up, and there's a big risk here to do that, James, as I was explaining on the grid, in terms of not running into somebody in that very high-speed entry to the first corner, which itself's a high-speed corner with 1 racing line effectively. So it is a problem. And Alonso needs to just be careful he doesn't go and lose a nose or a front wheel or something up against the 2 Hondas in front of him, who are absolutely not going to want to yield, and nor is the Toyota either. So a lot to do then for Alonso. I would imagine if Michael Schumacher and Ferrari, I think they've got about 5 laps less fuel on board than the Renault and the McLaren, probably the same for the Honda. And you know what would help them enormously? A safety car or something like that. They would transform the face of this race if they could save fuel and make it a 2-stopper, move it to a 2-stopper with a shortish first stint. Then Michael will be cooking on gas, but let's wait and see. I think it's going to be really tense all the way through the Grand Prix for the top 3 positions. There's
Jarno Trulli in the Toyota. He was a little bit late back from the Australian Grand Prix. He had an ear infection that meant the doctor said he couldn't fly home, so he had to stick around in Australia for a while. And there is Ross Brawn speaking to him on Friday afternoon. He said, even if you've not necessarily got the best strategy, for us, with this car and this tyre, we need to be at the front of the grid. And that's what they went out to do. And I think that they perhaps expected Alonso to be a bit further up the grid than he was. And it's going to be very interesting Schumacher is going to have to go in one of those races where he sprints absolutely the whole way. Is it going to be a 3-stop strategy for him versus the 2-stopper of Alonso and the McLarens? Or is Ross Brawn going to swerve him from a 3-stop into a 2-stop strategy, perhaps putting a little bit more fuel in at the first pit stop, looking at the kind of pace? He'll be looking at how fast the Renault is, how fast the McLarens are, and as well how fast the Honda of Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello is travelling. They certainly wanted to get themselves in front of the Renault on the grid because they know that they're not going to beat them if they start behind them. So they're trying something different on strategy as well. This is what Juan Pablo Montoya was telling Luis on the grid. A mixture of very different plans out here this afternoon. And that should make for a pretty entertaining race. And certainly everybody is going to have to push to the absolute maximum. Martin, it's warmer, much warmer than anyone expected. 43 degrees the track temperature. That's 20-odd degrees more than it was this time last year. And that's a lot warmer than anyone expected.
It's incredible, the sort of temperatures we see down in Bahrain or Malaysia. And often when you test it, it's freezing cold, and coming early in the season, it's always pretty chilly here. A nightmare place if you suffer from hay fever, by the way. Do not choose this as an overseas Grand Prix if you're a hay fever sufferer. There's something very strange about this place that everybody suffers with. But Jensen was a bit slow away, but I think what they're doing down there is they're doing a practice start. They'll be getting feedback on the radio now as to from the team with a target revs of how many revs they need to put on before they let the clutch go. Of course, straight after that, the traction control will pick up any wheel spin, but it's a critical run down to that first Tamburello chicane. Everybody off the grid, and then there's hundreds of mechanics now with equipment, tyres, everybody rushing to get out of the way, down the end of the pit lane, get out of the way before the cars return on this 3-mile racetrack.
Very interesting. Michael Schumacher has gone away. He obviously wants to get some heat into his tyres, but Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello aren't in any great hurry to get back to the grid. They want to keep Schumacher waiting when he gets back to the grid, and that's an interesting tactic by the two Honda drivers. Schumacher is over the hills and far away at this point. So making their way around. This is the revised Variante Alta. Tremendous shame that they've mullered this corner, frankly. It used to be a really aggressive attacking chicane, a wonderful place to go and stand and watch the grandstand up on the right. I would recommend to anybody who'd like to see Formula One cars in action, but really they've taken a lot of the heart and soul out of that corner. A number of the drivers feel it's a shame, others feel it's safer. The cars took off there. One of the big problems of this racetrack with the curves and the cars taking off over them, the wheels are spinning in the free air. When they land again, the tyres bite. It puts a huge pressure on the drive shafts, and this is a racetrack that does break drive shafts, and that's what happened to Kimi Raikkonen last season, if you recall, in this Grand Prix when he was leading comfortably in the early stages. An amazing phenomenon yesterday though, Martin. In qualifying we saw 7 cars within 1/10 of a second. It just shows you how close it is in that midfield pack, from around about position 6 down to sort of 12 and 13.
Yes, it's been a bit of a reset button, hasn't it, with the new V8 engines. They've taken a lot of gizmos away with variable trumpets and other systems, and I think we've got quite an even platform of engine output, and it's brought the cars together nicely. But the reliability, I have to say, has quite quickly become very impressive. The McLaren then, we keep hearing them say, we're happy with our qualifying position, we really don't mind, we're satisfied with our fuel load. But then they race the wheels off each other in the first few corners, and just about Raikkonen and Alonso have virtually taken each other out of this Grand Prix. Montoya have taken each other out of this Grand Prix. 2 of the first 3 starts we've had this season. So we'll keep an eye on those 2 as the tail enders are very busy trying to get some heat into their rear tyres. Meanwhile, pole position man's been waiting well over half a minute.
Yeah, and on a day like this with the temperatures as high as they are, that's not an ideal situation. 2 Super Aguri Hondas at the back of the grid. We've got 2 Hondas at the front of the grid as well. And the 62 laps of the San Marino Grand Prix will begin when the lights go out. Schumacher on the right, Button on the left. They're away. Traditionally difficult to start off the pit lane side. Button's done well though. Barrichello a little bit slow away, and Massa is attacking him. Everybody else attacking as well. Who's going to come out on top between the 2 Brazilians? Massa does, in front of Barrichello, and that must be Alonso. Look, he's already gained places off the start line. No funny business at the back, that's good to see. In the GP2 race this morning, there was a big accident on the start, but no problems with the Formula One cars. They are away, Schumacher leading, Button second, Massa third, Alonso, and then we've got Barrichello in the mix as well.
Well, the famous Renault star for Fisichella didn't work from 11th. He's currently running 12th. Alonso, though, did get up to 4th place, but crucially, Michael Schumacher leads the pack. It was the Barrichello must have been the biggest loser there, unfortunately, in terms of positions into that first corner, but exemplary driving. Apparently, there's a yellow flag hanging out somewhere. Oh, we got a car upside down. That is an MF1. And safety car standing by. We talked about this safety car issue. It has been deployed, of course, because they've got to get the driver out of there. Oh, there we go.
It's
down.
Albers. Yeah, Albers, you see rolling the car.
He should be okay in that, although you never want to roll over into the gravel trap. That's at the exit of the Villeneuve chicane where Rosberg crashed. And the reason that the gravel trap is so nasty is all the rollover safety bars you've got inside the car just dig into the gravel and can often leave your head and neck as quite exposed in those situations. I do believe he should have had enough. He's quite low in the car, isn't he, Albers? So hopefully he will be unharmed in that car.
At home you'll be asking what sort of speed was he doing when he had that roll. Approximately 110 miles an hour is the answer. Down at turn 6, it's the right-hander. It's where Nico Rosberg went off in free practice. And he doesn't look very happy, does he, Albers? He came across one of the Super Aguris. That's what flipped him over. And, well, the safety car understandably deployed. And that'll be very interesting from the restart point of view. We had 4 safety cars at the Australian Grand Prix 3 weeks ago. And there the story was about people unable to get heat back in the tyres. We'll find out whether the same problem exists for everybody here when they restart in a few moments. That is a very nasty smash for Christian Albers. It was Yuji Ide, the front of whose car he flipped over. And, well, Christian Albers ending up in the gravel trap. And a very dramatic start to this San Marino Grand Prix. Then Midland this weekend, when we were watching them out on the track, looking reasonably good, but in qualifying the performance wasn't quite there. That's why they're mixing it with Super Gurus at the back, and well, that's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, there's not a corner left on that untouched, and often what happens to the front wishbones punch a hole in the tub as well and put it in the skip. I'm okay, he says.
Message for everybody in the team and all his friends and loved ones. Here's Ide. He had some contact in that incident as well, working on the left front side of the car. Safety car will come in at the end of this lap. There is the safety car and the medical car in front of it. No Professor Sid Watkins anymore, of course. He's retired. Gary Hartstein, the doctor now for Formula One. Here's another look at the start, Martin.
I thought Schumacher got away slowly initially, but the second phase of the start was perfect for him. And as they come over the line now, it's a restart. Michael hasn't backed them up too much, but he's got enough of a gap, and away they go. Let's see how the relative cars and tyres perform. Now they've lost a bit of temperature and pressure in their tyres, and Jensen looks okay in P2, no doubt about it.
Michael Schumacher leading then, Button second, Massa third, Alonso fourth. Barrichello has dropped back to 5th place. Ralf Schumacher is 6th. Montoya is in 7th place. 8th is Trulli. 9th Webber, and 10th Kimi Raikkonen. He's dropped down a place from the grid. Mark Webber has overtaken him. So Webber possibly off the restart. We didn't see it, getting past Raikkonen. In racing conditions here at Imola, the safety car has just pulled off the track, and Michael Schumacher is leading this Grand Prix. We had an accident involving Christian Albers that brought out a brief safety car period while they removed the Midland from the gravel traps. Schumacher leading Button then. He didn't back the pack up quite as much as he might have done for the restart, and we're keeping a very close eye on Button's car. He had real problems getting the tyres back up to temperature in Australia after the restart because the track is so much warmer here. The temperature 43 degrees. Button doesn't seem to be struggling with that. Massa has got himself up into 3rd place. The real loser off the start was Rubens Barrichello, going from 3rd down to 5th place. Fernando Alonso picked up a spot. He's in 4th. And then 6th is Ralf Schumacher, 7th Montoya, 8th Trulli. Mark Webber managed to pass Kimi Raikkonen in the McLaren just before the safety car came out. So he's 9th. Raikkonen is 10th.
I remember I said at the beginning that dream ticket for Ferrari, as they were lighter on fuel, and Honda to a large extent, would be a safety car situation. That surely has helped them, but it was a very short one, wasn't it? Just 2 laps they did under the safety car. There is Ide, who tripped over and rolled the MF1 of Albers, and quite clearly will have front left suspension problems. He's, unsurprisingly, it's up on the computer here, there will be an investigation involving him and Albers. So we've got 20 runners then. Those two appear to be out of the Grand Prix. Albers upside down and without a wheel left on the car. E-Day with front left suspension damage, I would imagine. But Schumacher then has, let's see the first few sectors. Well, Button's pegging him, and so is Massa, and so is Alonso. So they're pretty even Stevens as they get away after the safety car period.
Yeah, it's looking pretty close, isn't it? And Massa's doing a job here for Schumacher because Alonso is tucked up behind him. We expect that the Ferrari's carrying less fuel than the Renaults. The Honda's perhaps possibly carrying even less than the Ferraris. Certainly the paddock sages were thinking Button and Barrichello would come in around about lap 15 or 16. Michael Schumacher around about lap 18 or 19, with Alonso perhaps as late as lap 25. If that is the case, then Alonso certainly at the moment is looking quite good. His last lap time, a 1:27.2, although Michael Schumacher did a 1:26.4, and that's a pretty fast pace for him, opening it out towards the end of the lap. And Button's going after him, though, just a second behind him, with Massa slightly slower than Button at this stage.
Yeah, I think this is, as you say, James, very good for Alonso. He's fatter on fuel and got a clear track, nobody hustling him. He's not having to go defensive. He can make the most of his fuel load. And if he can just hang on somewhere near Massa and he stops one time less than the three cars in front of him, he's looking in very good shape, isn't he? The people who are in trouble are the two McLarens in 7th and 10th. Once again, they can't unravel their great strategy because they're just tucked up in traffic.
Yeah. Well, it's a strange story of McLaren, really. They seem to have a lot of potential. They've put a new front wing on the car here for this weekend, and in qualifying it didn't quite go as planned. They're carrying a fair bit of fuel, but Raikkonen making a mistake qualifying on the outside of row 4. And it's a familiar litany, really. Rhythm from McLaren. We just aren't getting the most from our package. And that's one of the Toro Rossos spinning off the track. That's Scott Speed. No, it's Liuzzi. Beg your pardon. Antonio Liuzzi having a little moment there.
And just clumped the curbs too hard. A little bit of a new boy's mistake, that one for Tonia. Jarno Trulli pits for Toyota. Obviously out of sync, out of schedule. Meanwhile, Massa's the man fastest in the first sector of anybody so far. Michael Schumacher leads by a second and a half from Button. And here is the start again, the front row getting away in unison. It's Barrichello already under pressure before he gets down there. And Massa, his fellow countryman on the outside of him. I can't help but feel Rubens could have been more aggressive there and defended his corner more to be able to be up there to support teammate Button. A lot of action going on. The McLaren's getting wrong-footed at the back there too, looking very cautious down into turn 1 against the Toyotas. So McLaren quite slow off the line.
Yeah, you could see Raikkonen there just got squeezed out by the two Toyotas, and that really cost him a lot. So Raikkonen is in 9th place. Well, that was a very dramatic accident for Christian Albers. Louise Goodman has found him, though.
I have, and he's got a smile on his face, I'm pleased to report. But Christian, you're a bit dizzy after that.
No, not really. But, you know, you can expect this. The problem is, you know, the Super Guris are missing some speed. We, of course, are missing some speed against the other ones, but they try to make everything good in the first lap, you know, first corners, and you see what is happening, you know, and it's really a shame. But, you know, it's one positive thing is that we really have to work on our starts now to be sure that we stay in front and keep in front, because they're just breaking us down and just taking too much risk, you know. But we can see today again how safe the Formula One is, so it's good.
Did you see him coming, or was it all a bit of a surprise for you?
No, it was really a surprise, but, you know, they're always trying to search a little space to go in, and I think sometimes it's too much risk.
Thanks, Christian.
It's crazy in a way, isn't it? Because it's not really going to affect their race, whether they have a big, massive effort into turn 5 of a Grand Prix. It seems totally unnecessary. But as ever, the spectacular crashes don't hurt the driver, especially when you're spinning around in the air like there's no energy going on. And then when all the wheels start flying off, that's where the energy's dissipated to. And that's why Albers are standing there saying, hey, it wasn't that big a deal, really, because there's no impact as such.
Schumacher beginning to put the hammer down a little bit. The last lap he was 0.3 of a second faster than Jenson Button. This lap he was 0.3 in the first 2 sectors alone, so he's starting to open out a little bit of a margin now. But Alonso is keeping it pegged. His last lap just 0.4 of a second slower than Michael Schumacher's, so the margin just 4.5 seconds at the end of the previous lap, and Schumacher needs more than that, really, with the different strategies he's got. Alonso doing a good job here to keep the pace up, and Massa, you can see looking in his mirror as well. Not an awful lot he can do at the moment to affect things. He can't go forwards particularly, and he doesn't have Alonso right on his tail at this point. Ralf Schumacher is going quickly in the Toyota in 6th place. And really, Martin, all of the front runners, the top 8 runners, are all in the 126s, and that's a pretty impressive pace.
It is a good pace. Of course, obviously, if Michael needs to build a pit stop gap over, and there hasn't been a long enough safety car period to transform his strategy, as it were, and enable him to go a lot further on what fuel he did have on board. If he's lost 2 laps available to him to stretch the gap out to Alonso, hasn't he? It's currently 5.1 seconds after 7 laps. And, well, that's really touch and go as to whether Michael's fast enough to gain a whole pit stop. What is that here? 25, 24 seconds, something like that for a pit stop. So that's really, for me, that's the race that's going on here at the moment, is can Michael Schumacher get far enough away from Alonso, assuming we're right about their strategies.
Coming down into the Ravazza. The left-hander taken at 60 miles an hour, then about 70 in the second part of the Ravazza. Picking up, this is where all the grandstands are on the left, you see. All the crowds, the bulk of them. Last few years, not quite as big as in the past. 2000, we had 180,000 people here. All of this section will change for next year. The track having a £10 million facelift, new pits buildings, new main straight. It should be very sexy when we come back here next year. Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
Yeah, down at Toyota, Jarno Trulli has been forced to retire from this race, James. We saw a spinning Toro Rosso. It was actually Trulli who hit him, and he's damaged the steering rack and the front suspension on the right front side. So Trulli out of this one.
Apologies to Antonio Liuzzi then, but it didn't look like there was a Toyota involved in that. It looked like the Red Bulls were lying astern, didn't it? But anyway, hopefully we'll get a replay of that, and we'll have another look at it. The revs they're pulling on that, 19,000 RPM on the Renault, and Alonso's got his hands full today to beat Michael Schumacher. It's doable, but he's just got to pump in a perfect lap every time. That Renault is really aggressive in the way it accelerates. What surprises me, they're back to how they used to be a little bit. When we get down after this Variante Alta chicane, if we stay on board with him, when we get down to Ravazza, he just has to throw the steering wheel at the corner and wait for the front end to stop sliding, which is not quite as bad around the other parts of that. Let's have a look at this, look, just see what's happened. Yeah, loads of steering angle to try to get the front of the car to turn. Unusual setup, but it works for Alonso.
It's really strange. You sit here looking at this onboard shot and it's all very smooth, but when you're standing outside the track, it looks very edgy indeed. Well, we heard about Jarno Trulli from Ted, and Louise has found him as well.
Yeah, he's with me right now, James. Jarno, we saw Tonio Liuzzi's car spinning. I understand you were involved in making that happen, is that right?
No, everything was all right. I just had a failure on something which regarded the steering column. And unfortunately it happened after 2 laps. I felt the steering going around, so I had to stop.
So this happened independently of any other car?
I think this is only bad luck. It never happened to me before.
All right, thanks, Jarno.
Michael Schumacher leads the Grand Prix by almost 2.5 seconds from Jenson Button. Massa is 3rd, Alonso 4th, 5th is Barrichello, 6th is Ralf Schumacher, 7th Montoya, and 8th at the moment is Mark Webber. Looking in 9th place is Kimi Räikkönen, and he's lapping in the low 1:27s at the moment. He's just under a second behind Mark Webber, and I think Webber is dictating his pace a little bit at the moment. They're 17 seconds behind race leader Michael Schumacher, and that is not championship challenging form from Kimi Räikkönen and McLaren. Behind him in 10th is Villeneuve, 11th is Giancarlo Fisichella, who had a woeful time in qualifying. He just found himself on the wrong end of those 7 cars, all within 1/10 of a second that I mentioned before, and that meant he was down in 11th place on the grid. Now, he's obviously going to be carrying more fuel than the cars at the very front end, because he was able to have whatever strategy he wanted, having qualified outside the top 10. Rosberg 12th, 13th is Coulthard. He's gained a place off the start line. So too is Nick Heidfeld in 14th spot. Scott Speed is 15th. He's gained 3 places at the start, and that's the chat on the Honda timing stand. Gilles de Ferran there in the middle, former champ car driver, former winner of the Indy 500. Never raced in Formula One, but certainly one of the highest levels of single-seater racing outside of Formula One. And he's one of the men that makes the tactical decisions on the Honda wall. Fastest lap then, 1:25, 7:08 for Michael Schumacher. But the good news for Jenson Button fans, and there he is that's only 6/100ths of a second faster than Jenson is going. Button is in this Grand Prix undoubtedly, 2.5 seconds only behind Michael Schumacher, who is not able to shake him off.
Yeah, you have to say, they claim they've done a lot of work on these cold tyre scenarios and getting the things up to speed off the line and behind the safety car, and it certainly proves to be the case, although, as you say, James, the warm track temperatures helps enormously. But Michael's just pumped in a low 1:25. That's put the cat amongst the pigeons. Now they've all got to respond. That took a full half second out of Alonso in fourth, and also Button and Massa in second and third too. So Michael then, I suspect, getting very close to his first pit stop.
Of the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. That was Yuji Ide going back out on track. He had a collision with Christian Albers on the opening lap, which brought out a safety car, a very brief safety car. And we are racing here with 51 laps to go at Imola. And this is Jenson Button, and I'm delighted to tell all the Jenson Button fans out there that he is holding on to Michael Schumacher. He's only 2.8 seconds behind the Ferrari driver. His pace is really good at the moment. Michael's only dropping him 2 or 3 tenths of a second a lap at this stage. We don't know what the tactics are fuel-wise, who's going to pit first, but Button is definitely a contender in this Grand Prix. And the top 4 drivers are separated by just over 6 seconds. Schumacher, Button, Massa and Alonso, who you have to say is looking very good at the moment. If he's going to make one less fuel stop here this afternoon than Michael Schumacher, he is certainly a contender for this Grand Prix. They're all lapping in the mid 1:25 range. Schumacher only 2 tenths of a second then, faster at this stage of the Grand Prix than is Alonso, and that's not enough, is it, Martin?
No, it's not. He's got a 7-second lead over him. Michael just threw the gauntlet down with a 1:25.3, and all his close pursuiters have to respond to that, and they have too. Button, Massa, Alonso have all responded. Barrichello's 12 seconds behind Michael Schumacher now. He's kind of just fading away from this leading group of 4. But yeah, you have to say Button really is hanging on with a good pace. It's who's going to blink first for the pit stop, who needs fuel earliest, and Heidfeld, who's really and that's the Red Bull there of Klein jumping across the grass. Heidfeld's having a poor day, isn't he? Down in 14. Coulthard solid in 13, having started 14. Ted has further news for us.
Theory down here at McLaren, Martin, that Jenson's 3 stopping, which is actually the quicker way on paper. Would be a bit brave, though, because he needs to be careful he doesn't come out behind some more 2-stopping traffic. Now, if he came in now, he'd come out around Kimi Räikkönen, who's pretty heavy and is definitely 2-stopping. So, well, what do you think? That's possible, but would be brave.
I think it's probable, really, Ted, but they're so disadvantaged. They're now 16 and 20 seconds behind the 2 McLarens, and they keep doing this, and they keep going for the longer fuel, but it seems to take them out of the cut and thrust of the Grand Prix, doesn't it? Right up the sharp end. You get what they call field spread as the cars move apart, and you can lose a pit stop in, we're only on lap 14, as I say, Räikkönen 21.7 seconds behind now. That's virtually a pit stop anyway.
It is extraordinary, isn't it? When you think of Kimi Räikkönen, the race victories he's had, 9 of them so far in his career, you think of him scampering away at the front, controlling the field, dominating the weekend. Generally speaking, when he's come from a front row grid slot, but he keeps finding himself on the 3rd or 4th row of the grid, carrying fuel on race day. I just wonder if he'd take the same tactics as Ferrari have done here with Michael Schumacher to get themselves, whatever happens at the front of the grid, even if it means carrying a little bit less fuel in the qualifying, because you take the fuel from qualifying through to the grid with you, and that dictates how far you can go into the early part of the Grand Prix. You can't help but think that maybe Räikkönen might be in a slightly different situation. He certainly wants to be the fastest Michelin runner, because he's on the same tyres as the Renault, but currently Alonso is 4th, with Button also on the Michelin tyres up in 2nd place, and Räikkönen is down in 9th place. Comparison with Montoya, he's 4 seconds behind him, and Montoya is lapping in the low 126s. Räikkönen is about 2 to 3 tenths of a second slower than his teammate.
Well, I think Ted's right about the light fuel load for the Hondas. It's Rubens Barrichello, though, who's pitting first, so you would normally expect Button in on the... Oh, somebody just running across the pit lane there. That's so dangerous. And in then at 100 kilometres per hour. It's so narrow here in the pit lane. You really do throw your car at your 22 men. It's just the one acceleration lane then. We get 2 of those on the later circuits. But it's Rubens Barrichello who blinks first from 5th place, and they're putting a lot of fuel on board that car to try to bring him back into play with a different strategy. If Button has to pit the next lap, that's bad news for him. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher's done a 1:25.2, extended his lead over 4th place man Alonso to 8.4 seconds. So Michael, well, it's tight, isn't it? But I think Michael's got what he needs at the moment, and he, crucially, still out on track. No sign of the Ferrari crew in the pit lane to put some fuel in it.
I believe Rubens Barrichello popped out in 12th place between Rosberg and Coulthard. Coulthard is 40 seconds off race leader Michael Schumacher. So that's where Barrichello popped out. He's got, as I say, Rosberg in front of him, then Fisichella and Villeneuve. So he's in some traffic, but well, he's got a heavy fuel load, and we will see what he is able to do when all the cars in front of him make their pit stop. So keep an eye on Rubens Barrichello, certainly in the hunt for points today. Here's Jenson Button then, into the pits from 2nd place in the Honda, lap 16.
Well, as Ted predicted, it looks like a 3-stopper for Button, or will they too give him a lot of fuel? No, not at all. Oh no, problem with the right rear, wasn't it? So he might as well have had some more fuel. It's horrible when you see the refueler have to come off before the tyres are finished. That's bad news for Button.
It certainly is. At 9 seconds he was stationary for. He could well have taken on a bit more fuel there. Of course, the extra fuel slows you down, so the strategy is based on the kind of lap times that Jenson can do now with the amount of fuel he's got on board. If he had taken more on, he would be that little bit slow. He's popped out in front of Villeneuve. In 8th place has Jenson Button, and he is behind Kimi Räikkönen.
Well, we're hearing that there could be as much as 43 laps of fuel went into Rubens' car. That's a lot of fuel, but that would take him to the end of the Grand Prix, of course, wouldn't it? It would, well, that's going to put him, well, 58 laps. No, he must be stopping again. I'd be surprised if they fueled him right to the end of the race, but we'll find out later on. Michael Schumacher on lap 16 leads what must be now Felipe Massa, his teammate, by 7.7 seconds after Button's pit stop.
Yeah, Barrichello's certainly going to have to do a splash and dash, but I don't think he'll come in again before lap 50. And this is a 62-lap race, so certainly an interesting strategy by the Honda team. And if Rubens can make it work, clearly he's been radioing in, Martin, saying these tyres are just working beautifully. They're very consistent. He must feel they can last that kind of length of time. We're talking about 35-odd laps here. Into the pits comes Ralf Schumacher from 4th place.
Another solid weekend from him after his podium finish in Australia 3 weeks ago. The Toyota's certainly working better. The Bridgestone tyres looking particularly good here too. So Ralf away in 6.3. What we don't know with Barrichello, of course, we saw the end of his refuelling. We don't know if they actually had a problem getting the fuel rig on.
So back out on track goes the Toyota, and no doubt watching this at home in his beautiful home in Oxfordshire will be Mike Gascoigne, who was the team's technical director up until just after Australia when he parted company with Toyota. And so instead of planning race strategies and briefing the drivers and mechanics this morning, he'll have probably been mucking out the horses and having a big Sunday morning breakfast with the papers. A very different kind of life then for Mike Gascoigne. Will we see him again in Formula One? I'm sure we will at some point. There are a few teams that could do with someone of his expertise, no doubt. One or two people linking him with possibly a move to BMW. They need someone to hoist them up a little bit. Here's the Ferrari then, lap 17. Michael Schumacher leading by 8 seconds from teammate Felipe Massa. Just a second behind Massa is Alonso in 3rd place. And then you can see Montoya, Webber, Räikkönen, Button and Villeneuve. Räikkönen coming into play then with his heavier fuel load in 6th place.
Schumacher's just been on fire, hasn't he, since lap 1 of free practice. I think he's been scolding himself heavily due to that accident that was his fault in Australia 3 weeks ago. And he's certainly come here to make amends for that. Now, interestingly, Massa's slowing down. And of course, helpfully, that's slowing Alonso down too, because Michael's not getting enough of an advantage. Michael Schumacher's not getting the advantage he needs over Alonso at the moment, but he soon will do if Massa can back Alonso up by a second and a half a lap. And that's what I see happening out there right now, because Massa's been on Michael Schumacher's pace all through the Grand Prix, all bar a tenth or two, and all of a sudden he's now 2 seconds a lap slower, unless he made a specific error. But he's been slower now this last 3 laps, I think. So Massa now just beginning to... bit of team play going on here, James.
Undoubtedly doing a job for Michael Schumacher, and Alonso doesn't want to get too close to him. The dirty air won't help his aerodynamics, but it would be lovely to see Alonso not putting up with that kind of behaviour and having a go at trying to pass Felipe Massa. I think he's reasoning that this is lap 18. The Ferraris are probably going to have to make a stop in the not too distant future. So Alonso will be hoping that the 5 or 6 laps of fuel that he has over Michael Schumacher will allow him to do what he needs to do. But currently, Schumacher then is using this situation with Massa to really put the hammer down. A 1:25.1, the fastest lap of this Grand Prix so far by Michael Schumacher. That was Montero in the Midland that Alonso just flashed past. Montero had made a pit stop from 18th place, the sole Midland left in this Grand Prix, with Albers having had that roll on the opening lap. So there's the real interest situation. Massa, Alonso, 2nd and 3rd on the racetrack, and that margin is growing and growing to Michael Schumacher. It's now gone from 10 seconds to almost 12 seconds.
I'm looking out of the window. There's some Ferrari mechanics looking a little bit restless, as if they're expecting something soon, but they're not out at the moment. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher's pumped in the fastest first and second sector of any lap of any driver in this Grand Prix so far, and he's now beginning to stretch out the gap he needs. He was 11.8 seconds ahead of Alonso last time he crossed the finish line, and so far he is 1.3 seconds up on Alonso on this lap alone. So Alonso really being hampered now in the dirty air of that second Ferrari. Mind you, he's not exactly all over his gearbox, is he? 24.6 for Michael, 1 minute 24.6. This is a key stage of the Grand Prix.
Yeah, very clever. Into the pits comes the Ferrari. Let's take a look at what they can do. He's done enough laps to convert. It's the Massa, in fact, that comes in the Ferrari. Alonso is released then. He'll be very pleased about that. Michael Schumacher continues for another lap, possibly, or 2. What's the tactic with Ferrari?
Well, they backed Alonso up about 5 seconds. If you look at where Alonso was and add on what he was losing anyway, they backed him up about 5 seconds. Button goes through and is now, or regains his position ahead of Felipe Massa. Good news for Jenson Button.
Certainly very good news indeed for Jenson Button. Button was running in 7th place behind cars who have not stopped yet. Montoya, Webber and Raikkonen, 3rd, 4th and 5th. And so that's pretty important for Jenson that Massa didn't come back out in front of him. So by slowing Alonso down, obviously Massa has sacrificed his own chances of leapfrogging Jenson Button. So very much team play at work from Ferrari. They are ready for Michael Schumacher, and Felipe Massa has just had a lesson in what it means to be number 2 in the Scuderia.
Get it down to 100 miles, and that's a very tight little left-right into the pit lane, and Ferrari don't have the advantage now just because they didn't win the World Championship last year, just popping straight into their box, straight in a aligned position. Michael has to sweep in. Costs you a 10-2 only, and 8 seconds. Do you think he's, well, it's very possible they've moved Michael then, with the help of a couple of laps under the safety car and a very slow run round to the grid, that they've converted him into a 2-stopper.
Vitally, he came out just in front of the Super Aguri in the Midland. It would have been a stinker if he'd come out behind those 2 cars, wouldn't he? He's got clear track in front of him, and well, that's really got 2-stop written all over it. He's taken on about 60 kilos of fuel, so he'll come in again around about lap 40 or 41. So Ross Brawn has done what we thought he might do, and that switch Michael Schumacher from a 3-stop onto a 2-stop. So now it's up to Pat Simmons, the technical brain at Renault, to think about what they can do. Alonso's got about, we think, 4, 5, 6 more laps of fuel. These are crucial laps then for Alonso. He's already set his fastest first sector of the race so far. Middle sector, not particularly quick, but he really needs to make these laps count, Martin.
He does, and so do McLaren. They've now really got to go for it. I think you'll see the 2 McLarens suddenly coming alive, with the other people stopping. They're up to 3rd and 5th, and if they've got some raw speed in that beautiful looking McLaren, now is the time to deliver it. now that the others have made their stops. But you're right, Alonso's just got to turn it on big time now. Middle sector, though, not that good on this lap, so it's not suggesting he had a bundle of time left in his pocket. Over the line he goes with a 1:25.2. Not that great.
0.6 of a second slower than the fastest lap of the race so far, set just a moment ago before his stop by Michael Schumacher. So let's see how much he can improve his pace. He's going to need to. That little moment of being backed up by Massa has certainly harmed his chances. But look, he's in clear air, and that's where he likes to be. A relentless racer, Fernando Alonso, still just 24 years of age, the youngest ever Formula One world champion, and he's had a grip on this world championship since the very first day, and he's not keen to relinquish it. Whatever happens, he'll go away from Imola still leading the points, but he wants to get as high a position as he possibly can on this racetrack, knowing that this was one that was always likely to favour Ferrari, and really if Ferrari can't get a win here, it's going to be difficult for them to get a win elsewhere.
Well, we're expecting Alonso to two-stop, and he's only 7 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. So he's got to stop twice. We think Schumacher's got to stop once. It's looking very, very good for Ferrari at the moment. McLaren, have they responded? Not really. They're doing 1:26s, so they need to be in the low 25s or possibly even late 1:24s, just like Alonso needs to now. What is this one going to be? It's going to be low 25 again, I think, something like that. 25.0 actually. But it is his fastest lap of the Grand Prix. We're not getting a lot of team radio today, sadly. But if we were, I'm sure it would be his engineer screaming at him, like, now, push, 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 Fernando. This is the moment. But right now, Ferrari have the upper hand.
Kimi Raikkonen pits, Martin. Look at this. On lap 23, not carrying as much fuel as perhaps we thought he was. Either that or they've decided he was being held up behind Webber, who was running in 4th place. He certainly was close up behind him, that's for sure. So was that about running close to the edge of his fuel, or was that a slightly earlier stop? Let's see where he feeds back out of the system. It's not been a shining day here for Kimi Raikkonen. Teammate Montoya's doing a slightly better. He's currently running in 3rd place, 12 seconds behind race leader Alonso, and 5 behind Michael Schumacher, but of course he has not yet made his stop. Webber is 4th for Williams. 5th is Button, working his way back up after making an early stop. 6th is Massa. 7th is Jacques Villeneuve, having another strong run for BMW Sauber. You can see he's yet to make a stop. And also Giancarlo Fisichella. Those two drivers started this Grand Prix outside the top 10, and those who qualify outside the top 10 are able to choose whatever strategy they want. And they've obviously decided to put a fair bit of fuel in the car. You can see 2 drivers have retired, Trulli and Albers.
I tell you what Alonso is doing right now. He's passing effectively. He's passing, and with a 1:24.5, that's the kind of lap times he needs. He's really had to dig that one out, hasn't he? Montoya pits 2. So McLaren saying they were really comfortable with their strategy. They won't be quite so comfortable now. They've not really gone any much further than the Ferraris. Webber pits 2 for Williams. But Alonso, what he's doing right now is moving himself up ahead of Button and Massa when he comes after his pit stop. I think he's going to end up in a net 2nd place.
Oh, for sure. This is about Alonso versus Michael Schumacher to the finish, and the crucial time is going to come around the 2nd pit stop. Michael Schumacher will stop around about lap 40-41, and depending on how much fuel Alonso puts in at his stop, he'll be coming in perhaps 4 or 5 laps later, and that's really the crucial determining point in this race. But was that early phase enough for Michael Schumacher, or can Alonso and Renault do something here now? Can they dig deep and find some time? Will Michael Schumacher encounter some traffic or some difficulties? It's certainly finely balanced at the moment, but you'd have to say at the moment it's advantage Ferrari, advantage Michael Schumacher.
Alonso's giving it full bananas, no doubt about it. It almost missed the apex of the first Ravazza. He really came steaming down the hill, but it's another 1:24.9 for him, so he has got it into the 24s, and he's absolutely driving the wheels off it. It's good to see, but I don't think it's going to be enough.
Well, he's opened out to 8.7 seconds over Michael Schumacher, who of course is carrying his extra fuel load, having made his stop. So Alonso's added 1.7 seconds to his lead over him in the last 2 laps. He's certainly giving it everything he can, no doubt about that. Montoya has made her pit stop from 3rd place. That puts Jenson Button back into 3rd then. He's 26 seconds behind the race leader and 17 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. So Button lost a lot in that first round of pit stops, didn't he? Because he was only 5 or 6 seconds behind him.
Yeah, he had the sticky rear wheel, if you remember, didn't he? Probably lost about 3 seconds in that too. And since he came out, he's been lapping in the 26s, whereas Alonso is 24s, Michael Schumacher 25s. How far can Alonso go before he needs some fuel? We're approaching, we know we're near half distance, are we? So he's certainly gone a long way. And he said in the week, didn't he? I'll be happy with second at Imola. It's almost as if he knew, as if he expected Ferrari, who've always been very strong at this racetrack, to be ahead of him.
Here's an interesting thing, though, Martin, as you mentioned, that Alonso coming into the pits then from the lead, 8.7 seconds over Michael Schumacher.
See what I mean about the world champions having the direct run into the pit box? It always helps. So.
Crucial thing here, though, is can he get out in front of Jenson Button? Michael Schumacher flashes across the line. He is back in the lead here in Imola. Where is Jenson Button? Where is Fernando Alonso? How close are they going to be? No sign of Button just yet.
Easy. He's got it easy, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's got it easy. So he has leapfrogged Jenson Button and Felipe Massa by staying out longer on his first stint. And Alonso is up into second place. It worked beautifully for him. So, Schumacher leads. Alonso is second. Button, Massa, Montoya, Villeneuve, Webber, Fisichella getting himself into the top 8, but he has yet to make a pit stop, not yet at half distance at Imola. So now we're into the middle phase of the Grand Prix. Alonso stopping, taking on 9.1 seconds worth of fuel, so he will stop quite a bit later than Michael Schumacher. He came in first time round 5 laps later, and he's taken on more fuel as well. So he's going to be coming in the late 40s. Michael Schumacher's going to be coming in the early 40s. That's quite a big cushion that Pat Simmons has given Alonso to try and do something with.
I'll tell you something else. Michael's car does not look good on this set of tyres. Got a lot of understeer everywhere. We saw him coming out on the AstroTurf carpet at the top chicane, and the front of the car is not doing what he wants. A lot of understeer there, and I just wonder if this phase of the Grand Prix may not be that good for Michael Schumacher. Is it pressures? Is it just the different? Look, there's another corner. He got nowhere near the apex down at Tosa. Front of that Ferrari is not hooked up at the moment.
It certainly doesn't look that way, does it? Alonso, though, fat with fuel. See what he can do, keeping the pace up as much as possible. A bit of a different perspective now, then. We're riding on board with Juan Pablo Montoya, the 5th place runner, and that's Felipe Massa in front. Both these men have made pit stops. They're on different strategies. Massa stopping on lap 19, Montoya stopping on lap 23. Let's take a look at what it feels like to be Juan Pablo Montoya. Feeling the G-forces laterally, the yellow ones, pulling his neck from one side to the other. Pulling his neck very hard to the left there through Acqua Minerale. Hugely fast corner, that is. Up the hill, picking to about 180 miles an hour before the braking zone for Variante Alta. Made a lot tighter this year. Montoya looks relatively comfortable in that McLaren. Lap times mid-126s. Pretty comparable with Michael Schumacher at the front, actually. Just a couple of tenths of a second a lap slower. So Montoya definitely on for a good slug of points here today.
Felipe Massa too, very slow at this phase of the Grand Prix. In the other Ferrari, so something strange going on there.
Lap 28 of the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola in Italy. A beautiful sunny day here, 43 degrees the track temperature, 28 the air temperature, much warmer than anyone expected. The first round of the European season in Formula One, and we have got quite a scrap on our hands here. It seemed in the early phases as though Michael Schumacher and Ferrari had done enough to try and get control of this Grand Prix. He stopped earlier than Fernando Alonso for fuel, and he seemed relatively comfortable, particularly as teammate Felipe Massa had backed Alonso up a little bit. But Martin, you spotted some problems with the Ferrari in this middle phase of the Grand Prix.
Yes, I don't think they were able to put brand new tyres on. We're trying to find out, but they're not happy with the car. They're back in the 126s. We were on board with Michael Schumacher briefly, and he's got an armful of understeer. Massa is slow too, and I wonder if they got some graining on the used tyres, something like that. But they've just suddenly lost a bundle of pace. They're nowhere near as fast as they were before the pit stop. And Schumacher's struggling in the mid-26s. You've got Alonso in the low 25s. Button's catching him too from third place. Meanwhile, Massa in fourth place is slipping back into the clutches of Montoya and Webber. So the Ferraris then suddenly have lost all the pace by changing the tyres and putting some more fuel on board.
Very interesting indeed. It's not working for them in this phase of the Grand Prix. There is Massa in fourth place. Juan Pablo Montoya breathing down his neck at the moment. Montoya lapping in the mid-26s because that's the pace that Massa is doing. And Montoya is definitely faster than him, I think, at this stage of the Grand Prix. But it's fantastic news for Jenson Button, who is certainly playing himself back into contention. Definitely has a chance of a podium here today. Alonso, though, is taking Michael Schumacher on for the race win here, with Button closing in as well. So the effect of this situation, understeer, as Martin was talking about, the situation where the car wants to push straight on through a corner, it just doesn't want to turn in. And if we get a shot of Michael Schumacher, you'll see quite graphically exactly what Martin's talking about. That last lap, a 1:26.7 for Michael. The pace is going away from him, slowing down. He had 8.5 seconds in his pocket over Schumacher, over Alonso. He's lost 1.3 seconds on that lap alone. Alonso's reeling him in, so is Button. Ted Kravitz, tell us what's going on.
Well, I'm down at Ferrari. They're pretty baffled. The only explanation they can think is that Michael used all his new tyres, save for one set that he started the race with at the beginning during qualifying. So he had to put on an old set of tyres in this stint. There has to be the explanation. Ross Brawn hunched over the pit wall, very worried about this, but at the moment it looks like just tyre graining before we know of anything worse.
It's so difficult to get that back, but I think Alonso and Button smell an opportunity here, and they're going to pick their pace up and hope to punish Michael Schumacher. Fisichella pits for the first time this afternoon from 7th place. Haven't seen much of him. Some pretty grim afternoons going on out there for several people, actually. Raikkonen back in 8th with no pace whatsoever. Ralf Schumacher slipped back to 9th. The Toyota's slow, as has Barrichello. That's bad news in the other Honda. Meanwhile, he's a couple of seconds behind his teammate at the moment, is Barrichello. Rosberg struggling for Williams. Coulthard in the Red Bull up to P12 now, but generally some difficulties going on back there. But up the front, there are two guys that have really got some fantastic speed. That's Alonso and Button, and they are going to move up behind Michael Schumacher, who's just done a 1:27.0 in clear space. He's going slower and slower at the moment.
1:25.5 for Alonso. The gap comes down to just over 5 seconds, and Button pits for the second time this afternoon. That's pretty early. This is only lap 31. I wonder if that's a problem for Jenson Button. I really hope it isn't, because he was having a super Grand Prix up to that point. In he comes, some changes to the front wing. A little bit of turn, he's obviously... whoa, problems! They nearly knocked his head off. What's the problem with the car? He's stopped in the pit lane. Fuel rig was left on the car. It's all gone Pete Tong for Jenson Button. I don't believe it. What rotten luck. Look, it's snapped off.
He can go, if they can get out, he can go. Go for it, Jenson. But that's compromising massively. Of course, his teammate, look, they put the lollipop down and he elected to ignore that, surprisingly, I have to say. And we'll have to go down into the pit lane, but and Louise is down there.
Yes, I saw that all happening in front of me. The lollipop came down to stop Jenson, but it was too late. It was already on his way. He set off taking half of the fuel rig with him, knocked a couple of the mechanics over at the same time as well. So I think the boys are all okay. There'll be a lot of assessment going on down here to find out exactly how that happened.
It's so frustrating, isn't it? He's so close, and here, of all the races we've had so far this season, this is the closest for him that he is to the pace. In comes the lollipop. Take a good look at the man on the fuel rig. See the hose over his shoulder? Oh, Lollipop comes up. He just a clear mistake then. Lollipop man lifted it, and the fuel rig was clearly still attached. So, well, they'll have a discussion about that. Alistair Gibson, I believe, the chief mechanic, is the man on the Lollipop. He'll be kicking himself for that one. But poor old Jensen, he was right in the hunt there as well. Different strategy from the others, though. 3-stopper, but the pace he was going at looked like he was going to make it work for himself for a podium here this afternoon. While all that drama has been going on, though, Martin, Alonso now just over 4 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. He's halved the margin to Michael in the last 5 or 6 laps.
Yeah, and he's got a much better car underneath him. Michael, of course, used 2 brand new sets in qualifying yesterday, and he's paying the price. Remember, they come to a Grand Prix with just 7 sets of tyres. They have to have 2 different compounds, so effectively they've got 6 useful sets of the compound that they choose, and then they've got to take them all through free practice, qualifying and the Grand Prix. And you have to be quite conservative with your usage. Renault risked it yesterday by not using new sets in qualifying, caught Fisichella out. He didn't make the top 10 shootout. Alonso only just made it, but look, today they're getting paid dividends. But I wouldn't want the job of Lollipop Man for all the Team China, but I'm afraid it did look like an early call on that. And I have to say, Jensen is a bit culpable there too. When you're being hit on the head by a Lollipop that's coming your way and not being lifted up, that means something's not right.
We need to find a new word for that object. Lollipop is just not a Formula One enough words, not enough gravitas, really. So answers to the F1 ITV website, please, what you think we should start calling that thing, because Lollipop just sounds so childish. But there's nothing childish about it when you get involved in an incident like that, hoping all the mechanics are okay down there. We saw a few of them getting wrenched off their feet. I tell you what, though, Martin, this is an exact reverse of what happened here last year at Imola in the middle phase of the Grand Prix, where Michael Schumacher was catching Alonso at 2 seconds a lap. This year, it's the other way around. Alonso's catching Michael at 1.2, 1.3 seconds a lap. Certainly a very different pace from the early part of the Grand Prix.
And Alonso knows he hasn't necessarily got to pass him when he gets there. He knows he's got a lot more fuel on board to just go that bit further. Ralf Schumacher pits for the 2nd time in the Toyota. He was 7. Montoya just 0.7 of a second behind Felipe Massa in the 2nd Ferrari. And lapping, I'm sure he'd be lapping quite a bit quicker if he just passed him, but such a difficult racetrack to pass on.
So let's take a look at the situation then, just through the halfway stage of this enthralling San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. Alonso now just 3 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, and he is going to go quite a few laps longer, maybe as many as 8 or 9 laps longer than the 7 times world champion. He can see him now, and he is feeling very comfortable, unlike Michael Schumacher, who's really been struggling. Now he's found a bit more pace, though, Schumacher. He's in the low 26s, so he's improved by about a second from when he was having his difficulties 3 or 4 laps ago. But nevertheless, Alonso is just so much quicker than him at the moment. 0.7 of a second a lap at this point faster than Michael Schumacher, and still reeling him in. Massa is in 3rd place, looking for a podium finish here at Imola, but Montoya is tucked up right behind him and looking stronger at this point in the Grand Prix. They are 24 seconds behind the leading pair, so it's very much between Massa and Montoya for that final podium slot. Sadly, Jensen Button, after that mess up in the pits, is down in 8th place. It'll still give him a point, but let's see if he can rescue something from there. Kimi Raikkonen has been a low-key presence in this Grand Prix. He is lapping in the high 1:26s, but down in 6th place, and that's doing nothing for his championship hopes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Michael was already on pole yesterday when he went out for a 2nd run, wasn't he? He didn't need, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and 20/20 vision, of course, but he'll be ruining the fact that he went out again, and on board with Montoya, trying to find his way past what I think was a Williams, and not at all happy about that. So look at Alonso, look how much later on the brakes he can be, because when your front tyres are not giving you the grip you need, James, you lose braking ability as well as turn in too, and you just can't stamp on the brake pedal anywhere near as late if you've not got the purchase of the front tyre into the tarmac.
Well, around about 5 or 6 laps to go to Schumacher's next stop. I think he can't wait to get a new set of tyres on. Alonso's just going to have to probably sit there behind him unless he's feeling incredibly brave and wants to have a pass. We've certainly seen him do that before in the past. He's not afraid of overtaking Michael Schumacher at all. That's how he caught him over the last few laps, you can see. And what's he going to do now he's caught him? And will Schumacher be able to do anything with a new set of tyres once he gets them? Probably not, because Alonso has the advantage tactically as well here. He can go longer on the fuel, and it's looking pretty comfortable for Fernando Alonso. But I imagine the temptation to want to overtake Michael Schumacher, whilst he's a bit of a wounded animal at the moment, must be enormous. But if he doesn't do anything rash, Alonso can definitely win this Grand Prix.
The Barrichello pit, so although we saw the refueling rig on for 14 seconds, clearly it wasn't always putting fuel in, because he's gone nowhere near as far as we thought he would. And I think Alonso needs to think of his World Championship. He cannot afford to go and wipe a wheel or a nose off against that Ferrari. And right now he doesn't need to. Massa in the other Ferrari is 22 seconds behind them and also has to pit. So, well, but I don't think that Fernando thinks like that, does he? He wants to. I think he's just going to want to move up. If he gets anywhere near him in a braking zone, he'll sail past him.
Well, notoriously difficult place to pass Imola. Remember last year, Michael Schumacher spent 12 or 13 laps tucked up behind Alonso at this kind of range. The positions the opposite of what they are here today, and he could not get past him. It's a bit of a different situation here now. That was a run to the flag. There were no more pit stops to come, whereas this year there are more pit stops to come. Alonso's very close now. That back mark has given him a chance. Schumacher had a bit of a compromised entry into Tosa corner. Up the hill they go then, towards the Piratella. No yellow flag here, so no overtaking allowed even if he wanted to or is in a position to. Heading out towards Aqua Minerale now.
Yeah, there's no, you need a decent braking zone. There's no kind of braking zone as Alonso gets it all wide in Aqua Minerale. In a way, he needs to just sit behind him, I would have thought, use the extra few laps to build the cushion rather than burning his tyres out now. But if you know, if Michael does bolt a new set on and starts flying again, Alonso knows he'll be under pressure later on in the Grand Prix. This is so close.
Yeah, I think we've got a car. I saw a car in the wall there at, up at the Variante Alta. I think that's Yuji Ide. Yeah. Look at this, it's very interesting. Look how much earlier Schumacher goes on the brakes and how much earlier Alonso can use the throttle. These are real-time comparisons here. The green, the throttle, the red, the brakes. Everybody in the grandstands below us, we're just above this main grandstand they've just gone past. Everybody up on their feet every time they come through. They're loving this. We've got 26 more laps of it.
Well, they're back into the 1:28s now, which is kind of pedestrian. 4.5 seconds slower than the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, set by the man who's struggling most now, Michael Schumacher. Clearly with some kind of graining situation, and the graining's not going to go away, and surely Alonso's going to stick it up the inside, but Michael didn't give him any space at all, and I really thought he got a good shout there. But you can see then Alonso is actually quite cautious about it. He knows there's no point in throwing away 8 and almost certainly 10 points that are available to him this afternoon.
That's true, but we are in the entertainment business, and so is Fernando Alonso. He's played the percentage game last year, driving this time last year for sure. He would have played it safe, but you wonder this year. He did say to us on Friday that he needs to take more risks this year to attack more. He does feel under a bit more pressure, I think, from those around him. At the moment, you'd have to say it's looking good for him, though. Flavio Briatore, we saw a moment ago, thoroughly enjoying himself up on the pit wall. The new president of Renault Sport announcing this week that Briatore is to be re-signed for the future and making a commitment for Renault to stay in Formula One. And that's terrific news for everybody who loves Renault and Formula One. And look how close Alonso is now as they go down the straight. Schumacher looks in his mirror, checks them. Alonso just goes to the left just to show him he's there, down towards Tamburello chicane. Certainly Alonso is much stronger on the brakes, but it's down out of this Villeneuve chicane, which they're coming up to now, between Villeneuve and Tosa, where Alonso seems to be able to get closest to him, isn't it?
You can judge their pace by the fact that people they're lapping are hanging on to the back of them. That's how much slower Michael is. Meanwhile, Massa's now only 17 seconds behind them because Michael is just so slow out there. So, but it's still, remember, this is a carbon copy of last year, except reverse, where Michael was the faster man, as you said, James, and couldn't remotely get past Alonso. But Alonso's only chance, I think, is a big stab down at the Tosa hairpin, the other end of the racetrack from where they are now. There's no other real opportunity. You need such a big stop to gain what is a bit of space and a full car length on a competitor like Michael Schumacher.
Well, full 19,000 RPM then. This engine of Alonso's is in its second Grand Prix. This is the engine he won in Australia with. Look how close he gets on the back of Schumacher at Ravazza, but clearly he's not stinting on the revs at this stage. He's using all the revs available, is Alonso. I think helped by the fact there were 4 safety cars in Australia. That meant that the engines were less stressed than they would otherwise have been. But this is a tough track on engines. 73% of the laps spent at full throttle, and it asks a bigger question of engines than any of the tracks we've been to so far this season. And well, Martin was saying that those 2 back markers are not getting dropped. Far from it. Klian and Liuzzi battling for 16th place, and they're actually slightly faster at the moment than the leading pair. And you can see that Klian is closing in on the back of Alonso. So, Ted Kravitz, what do you got?
Yeah, down at Ferrari, I've asked again what the problem is with Michael, and they say there's no problem with the car, using the word car, and all the tyre guys looking very concerned, doing their nut is Michael's engineer, Chris Dyer, on the pit wall. At Renault, meantime, they haven't had to tell anything to Fernando Alonso. They know that he can manage this period of the race, and that he'll take the chance when it comes.
Yeah, there's 2 things I want to see in here at the moment. One is I want to be on board with Michael Schumacher, Mr. Italian director, please. And also, we need some pit radio today to understand what they're being told out there, and to find out how the teams are coping with this and what their instructions are. Unfortunately, we're getting neither at the moment.
Well, just to clarify the situation, obviously it's a local director here. Rai Television, the Italian national network, are providing these pictures to us. First 3 Grand Prix of the season, the pictures came from Bernie Ecclestone's FOM TV organisation, who also control the team radio and all the graphics that you see on your pictures. So it's up to the local director to give Martin what he wants. Unfortunately, he probably isn't listening to our commentary. He's listening to his own national broadcasters, and they're not giving us a nice onboard of Michael Schumacher or indeed of Fernando Alonso. But here we go then, 23 laps still remaining in this race, and a comfortable situation for Alonso, no doubt about it. Behind them, Massa is closing in. This is bringing the 3rd, 4th and 5th place and 6th place runners much closer to the front now, the slow pace of the front runners. Massa is now just 14 seconds behind this battle for the lead. Montoya is just right behind him. Weber is 9 seconds behind Montoya in 5th place. Raikkonen is 6th as Alonso has another look up the inside of Michael Schumacher. And is he going to have a crack at it? Oh, he's getting very close now, Martin. Very close. They're lapping in the high 127s. And they're actually holding up Klian and Liuzzi now, I think.
Meanwhile, Weber in 5th place is doing a 25.4. Quickest man on the racetrack. They're flying back there. This is just concertinaing the whole field back up again. I can't believe it's tactical from Michael Schumacher. There's no point in trying to bring Massa and co back into play, because with Massa, he just brings Montoya, Weber and Raikkonen with him. Button, after his dramas, is in 7th place at the moment. Fisichella 8th in the 2nd Renault. But I just can't see any reason why Michael would be intentionally backing the pack up. I think he just doesn't. Well, I can see for myself, he hasn't got any front grip.
Yeah, that's the problem for the Ferrari. They've come here with a raft of changes to the car, which certainly seemed through free practice and qualifying to have made a big difference. This is traditionally a Bridgestone track, and they are on the Bridgestone tyre. Alonso using the Michelin tyre. Weber also is using the Bridgestone. There's nothing wrong with his pace, as you said. A low 1:25 at the moment. Fastest man on the racetrack. So it's not particularly a Bridgestone problem per se, other than the set of Bridgestones that Michael Schumacher has on that car at this particular time. They worked fine in the first stint, and not so well now. Renault mechanics getting ready for one of their drivers.
But if they bring Alonso in now, Fisichella's not that long ago pitted, so if they bring Alonso in now, oh, he's well wide there, isn't he? Then they're going to feed him right back into the Weber-Raikkonen scrap for 5th and 6th, unless it's a very, very quick stop.
But the thing is, Martin, they've looked at it and realised that everybody else is closing up behind him. If they don't bring him in now, knowing that Schumacher will be pitting in the next lap or two himself, that they could actually get leapfrogged by someone behind them, like Massa, for example, or Montoya. So it's vitally important. It's quite clever thinking by Pat Simmons. I think he's going to bring him in, knowing that Ferrari are going to make a stop as well, and knowing that the field are concertinaing up. Alonso gets the call. In he comes. A tactical switch by Pat Simmons. Ted Kravitz taken away.
But Ferrari are out in the pit lane as well. So it looks like that's going to be for the other one, for Felipe Massa. But that would have worried Pat Simmons, and he had a little smile, did Pat Simmons, when he made that decision. Excellent stop by Renault. Let's see what Ferrari can do to respond. Here's Massa.
Ferrari will respond instantly. They'll get Massa dispatched, and surely they'll bring Michael in straight away as well at the end of this lap to respond to that. And that's the only thing they can do to keep Michael Schumacher in the hunt. Alonso's got to pull out some kind of stunning outlap as well now.
Yeah, he's in luck though, Alonso. He cleared Montoya. He's in front of Juan Montoya. And with Felipe Massa having pitted as well, it looks like it's worked out beautifully for Renault, for Pat Simmons, the tactical genius on the wall, and for Fernando Alonso. Ferrari, well, they were going to come in roughly now anyway. We knew that from the fuel load that they took on at the first round of pit stops. Renault knew that as well, and that is very good thinking.
With the traffic coming up then for Michael Schumacher as well, it makes it doubly hard to overtake them, even with blue flags. If you've not got the car underneath you, we're hearing that Christian Klein has retired. Toro Rosso there, I think, was just getting out of the way rather than struggling necessarily. There's Schumacher running very wide in the exit of Rivazza 2. Will they pit him immediately? I think they will. I think they should, and I think they definitely are. It's the only thing they can do. They have to respond to the Renault pit stop.
But I think this is scheduled anyway. I think this is when they were going to come in, Martin. This is lap 43, and that's roughly bang on target. So there were nothing much they could really do about it.
Used tyres, so they're certainly not new fronts. It's a slower stop. Where's Fernando Alonso? Has he gone through? He's going past us now. He's not made it. Michael Schumacher's come out in front. That's the problem. If he did have to stop, then they made a tactical error, because Alonso, we think, had the extra fuel. He could have gone on for 5 or 6 laps. It's not worked out for Renault.
Wow.
Ferrari were bound to respond instantly to the Renault move.
Wow. What about that? Ferrari back out in front with a different set of tyres, a different set of circumstances now. Is this set going to work for Michael Schumacher?
It's always dangerous when you're line astern in a close race and you come across a back marker. You've got to hope he sees that there's a second car coming through. Michael Schumacher leads the Grand Prix then from Fernando Alonso.
Well, it didn't quite work out, did it? It was the right idea, but two things scuppered it. Alonso came out in traffic, and Michael Schumacher wasn't quite as slow on his in-lap as Renault had thought he might be. We'll be analysing that one for some time. There it is, an overhead view of it, as Michael Schumacher comes out. There is Alonso, and even though it was a slower stop, he rejoined in front of the Renault. Looking down then, Montoya is leading this Grand Prix at the moment, 4.5 seconds in front of Michael Schumacher and Alonso. The battle for second place, which will become the battle again for the lead shortly when Montoya makes his second stop of the afternoon. Raikkonen is currently in 4th place, just 4.5 seconds behind Alonso, but he has to stop again as well. Then it's Massa, who's the net 3rd place man here this afternoon, 10 seconds behind Raikkonen. Jenson Button's done well to fight himself back into position, but we believe he has to make another stop here this afternoon, so he'll drop back down again after that. What a shame for Button. What might he have achieved today if he hadn't had that problem in the pit stop? Fisichella is 7th, Webber 8th, Ralf Schumacher 9th, and Rosberg 10th. Looking at the first round of pit stops, Alonso stopped 5 laps after Michael Schumacher first time round and put more fuel in the car, so it was definitely a tactical switch by Renault to bring him early, but it seems to have backfired on them, doesn't it? Here's Montoya from the lead then on lap 45. He will slot back in again behind Massa and Button as well. Well, Button has pitted, in fact. So he'll slot in behind Massa. Jenson Button pits from 6th. He's in front of Massa. of the San Marino Grand Prix from Imola, and Michael Schumacher is leading with Fernando Alonso in second place. They've both made their stops here this afternoon, don't need to make any more. Kimi Raikkonen is third, he has yet to make another stop. Juan Pablo Montoya has just stopped and came out in front of Felipe Massa. And Jenson Button had got himself back into contention, but he's on a different strategy here this afternoon. And having had a compromised pit stop second time round, he has fallen out of contention. But, well, it was very interesting, wasn't it, that Michael Schumacher was so slow. Alonso was tucked up behind him. We think he had about 5 or 6, maybe 7 laps more fuel in the car. But because they were going so slow, obviously Alonso was concerned about traffic. It appears that Renault made a tactical switch, bringing Alonso in, and it didn't work for them. Michael Schumacher wasn't as slow as they expected on his in-lap. Ferrari brought him in straight away after Alonso, and the traffic that Alonso encountered when he came out of the pits messed up his lap as well. And the combined result was that what should have been a leap for glory for Alonso, and a smart tactical switch by Pat Simmons, has backfired on them. And now Alonso has got to do the work on the racetrack. He's got 17 laps in which to overtake Michael Schumacher, and at the moment Schumacher is lapping in the mid-126s, and he seems a bit more comfortable with the car at this stage than he did in the middle phase of the Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think Michael was slow right from the outlap of that second phase of the race, and he doesn't appear to have such a problem this time, but we'll see if those tyres grey enough again. Alonso, oh, Michael already running wide, though, in the first Rivazza there, just trying to get the I think he will. I think he's just going to pick up the same problem again, James. So it's now a question of how brave is Alonso going to get to pass the Ferrari. And, well, when Michael was really on his back foot in the 1:28, Alonso couldn't find a way past. So not quite sure how maybe he's got to use a back marker to tuck him up with, or it's got to be Dan Deere into a corner somewhere. But is there any point when you're leading the World Championship by so much?
Well, yes, let's take a look at it. He's leading the World Championship, Fernando Alonso, 28 points. Michael Schumacher has just 11, so even if they finish like this, Schumacher will take 2 points out of that 17-second margin. But, well, Alonso's a racer, and there's nothing he likes more than beating Michael Schumacher. He's said it on many occasions, and will he find a way through? Complete reverse then of the final part of last year's Grand Prix, when it was Schumacher trying to find a way past Alonso. This time it's the other way round. Behind them, Raikkonen third, Montoya fourth, having made his second stop. So he's played himself into contention now, and he in fact is looking a very good chance for a podium here this afternoon if he can keep Massa behind him. Fisichella is up into 6th place. I think he's probably one stopping here this afternoon, so depending on where Raikkonen comes out, Fisichella is going to possibly finish 5th or 6th here this afternoon. Ralf Schumacher's doing a good job for Toyota, currently in 7th, having just made a pit stop. Mark Webber coming in 8th. Jenson Button, unfortunately for him, that poor stop drops him out of the points at the moment, and Rosberg rounds out the top 10.
I'll tell you what's going to happen here, I think, if my crystal ball is correct. You're going to find, in the not-too-distant future, 3 or 4 cars queued up behind Fernando Alonso. I think Michael's going to continue to back the pair of them right into the field. I think it'll be Montoya, Massa, Fisichella, probably even Ralf Schumacher. We'll have to wait and see, but they're all lapping quicker than the leader. So you could well see, say, at least a few of those making it up to the back of the leading squabble, depending on just how bad Michael's tyres get.
Well, there's the answer. Fisichella in front of Raikkonen. So the tactics for the Renault team, provided he doesn't have to stop again, and he stopped on lap 29. Well, I'm not sure he did take up enough fuel, actually. Maybe he does have to stop again, but we will wait and see on that one. It's a scrap between Fisichella and Raikkonen anyway for 5th and 6th places here this afternoon. Montoya looking good for a podium. Massa is 2.5 seconds behind him. And then you can see the rest of the runners. Coulthard still outside the top 10. He started this Grand Prix from 14th place, and that's exactly where he is now. Lots more races still to come as Alonso makes a mistake in the first Rivazza, possibly a sign that he's in trouble. There's Coulthard going very, very slowly indeed, and look how much that mistake cost Alonso. He'll come right back onto Schumacher, but, well, a strange moment there. 15 to go here at Imola, a lot of racing still to come. Giancarlo Fisichella did have to make a second stop. Here it is. From 5th place then, this will drop him back behind Raikkonen and behind Mark Webber. He'll be quite close to Jenson Button when he comes out. And Rosberg as well. He's behind Button. And that's Rosberg, I believe, coming through. No, there's Button. And there's Fisichella. So Fisichella dropping back to 8th place. Webber 6th. Jenson Button 7th. On for 2 World Championship points. How far is he behind Mark Webber? Just 2 seconds. And lapping half a second a lap faster than him. So when Fisichella joined them, it was with Jenson catching Webber. Here's Alonso. And he certainly has done a lot to catch Michael Schumacher. Look how quickly he came back onto the tail of the Ferrari. 14 laps to go here, and for a second year in a row, the fans here at Imola are being treated to a wonderful Grand Prix. 0.3 of a second separates 2 of the best drivers in the world after 50 racing laps here. The pace of these guys, they're in the low 27s again now, so looks like you're right, Martin. The same problem that hit Michael Schumacher in the first stint is starting to affect him here. Montoya, though, is almost 14 seconds behind them, and with just 13 laps to go, I don't think Michael Schumacher can do enough to back Alonso into the crowd. Raikkonen, though, is the fastest man on the racetrack at the moment in 5th place, lapping in the low 25s, 2 seconds a lap faster than Michael Schumacher's doing at the moment.
If Schumi drops back into the 28s, I think he is going to let them catch up. There's a couple of good fights out there. This is one of them, Button versus Fisichella. But also Raikkonen has cruised right up behind Felipe Massa for 4th place too. So we're heading for a 3rd and 4th.
Into the closing stages of the San Marino Grand Prix. We've had over 50 racing laps here, and 2 of the finest drivers in the world are just 0.3 of a second apart. Michael Schumacher is in trouble, not as much as he was in the middle part of this Grand Prix, but he's still struggling for pace at this point. He started this race from pole position with Fernando Alonso, who's currently in 2nd place and really hassling him, starting from 5th. Alonso had a great start, though. Michael Schumacher leading away from Jenson Button, also on the front row of the grid. And Button was really a match for Schumacher in the early part of this Grand Prix. We had a safety car early on when Christian Albers in the Midland had a spectacular roll on the opening lap. Alonso went quite long on the fuel. It really worked for him, and he played himself into contention, getting himself ahead of Jenson Button, who's been on a different strategy from the others. He's run 3 stops this afternoon. Unfortunately for Jenson, his second stop went all wrong when the lollipop was lifted up while the fuel hose was still attached, and it ripped it away from the hose and knocked a few mechanics over as well, and Jenson really fell out of contention for a podium at that point. He is currently in 7th place. Well, Michael Schumacher didn't like the second set of tyres he took on this afternoon, and his pace was terrible in the middle part of the Grand Prix. It allowed Alonso to close right up to him. Renault made a tactical switch, bringing Alonso in a little early, but it backfired on him. Ferrari came in the lap after, and Michael Schumacher rejoined in front of Alonso. Alonso having had a little bit of traffic on his outlap, and Schumacher not being quite as slow as Renault thought he was on that in-lap, and that's why we are where we are. There's another good scrap on the racetrack as well. That is between Massa and Raikkonen, and Fisichella is having a good battle. Here's Alonso. This is one of the places he's been very close to Schumacher, the Tosa corner, and 11 to go. Does he need to pass Michael Schumacher? No, from a championship point of view, he doesn't. He's 17 points ahead of him, and he's only going to give up 2 by finishing 2nd behind him. But does he want to pass Michael Schumacher? Martin, that is a very different question.
It looks like he wants to. I don't think he's going to take a massive gamble. He's actually going to touch ragged, you'd have to say, Fernando Alonso. He's looking a bit frustrated there behind Schumacher. Now it's a bit of his own medicine back from last year, isn't it? But the others are not really far. Only Raikkonen's fast enough to catch this pair, but he's stuck at the moment back in 5th behind Felipe Massa, having caught him very quickly and then just fallen back to Massa's pace. But Michael not struggling as much. He's doing mid-26s instead of the 28s he'd fallen into in the last stint. But there's 2 chances, I think, of a stab for Alonso. One of them is down into this last corner, but that is super risky, and Michael will have to yield if he comes down there. His best shot is out of the Villeneuve chicane into Tosa, but he doesn't look like he's anywhere near enough. That last lap was his closest, but he's been on the exit of Villeneuve and still nowhere near close enough to have a go at Michael Schumacher.
Put yourself in the cockpit here of Alonso's car, Martin. You've been here many times yourself. You're close up behind a car you know is slower than you are. You're watching what he's doing. You're watching what his weaknesses are. What's going through your mind?
You're just hoping to distract him and annoy him, which is to a certain extent why Alonso's driving an unusual line into some of the corners. A big concern, and I hope Renault have a good margin on their cooling, because all of the turbulent and very hot air that's coming off the back of that Ferrari as it's been sort of used and abused, passed through the radiators, feeds into the radiator of the Renault. And you can soon pick up 10, 15 degrees on everything, and the margins are not that great. So you've got to also think about your own reliability and your own car. But as I said earlier on, I think maybe Alonso's best shot is if they get tangled up in some back markers. But even then, with today's blue flag rules, they all just jump out of the way anyway.
Well, they're 5 seconds behind Jacques Villeneuve. He's the next back marker that they will encounter. That graphic just showing the margin between the 2 cars, but it's kind of academic, really. It's about a car length. Everybody up on their feet below us, loving this for the second year in a row here at Imola. The crowd being treated to a fantastically close battle between these 2 drivers. Last year an Alonso victory. What price a Schumacher victory this year? Montoya is not catching them. He is lapping around about the same sort of pace, slightly slower, and he's currently 14 seconds behind in 3rd place. Nevertheless, he's still 2.5 seconds ahead of Felipe Massa in the 2nd Ferrari, and looking good for a podium here this afternoon, Juan Montoya. Kimi Raikkonen has not really played much of a role in this Grand Prix. It's certainly not helped his championship hopes at all. He's running in 5th place, but he's 0.3 of a second behind Massa, and I imagine he would welcome the extra points from trying to put a pass on him. Webber really much lapping on his own, really, in 6th place for Williams. Another very solid performance from the Aussie, getting them pretty much the most out of that Williams-Cosworth package. Sir Frank Williams saying yesterday that he would be making a decision on engine choice for next year in the next few weeks. The engineers are pushing him hard. They could continue with the Cosworth engine, which has certainly shown very well in the early stage of this Grand Prix, or they could switch to Toyota, which is something they discussed last year. So we'll have a decision on that in the next few weeks. David Coulthard we saw going slowly earlier on as he was passed by these 2. He has since retired, and Louise Goodman is now going to find out why. Yeah,
it's been a double retirement for the Red Bull team. Christian Klein had to stop with a hydraulics failure, and then David, a few laps later, you've had to park it as well.
Yeah, we had a drive shaft failure, which I had a problem getting away at the pit stop, so I ended up having to do a double pull away, so that may have caused the damage, but obviously we'll find out in the data. But anyway, we lost drive.
How difficult was it for you to make any kind of impression on this race today?
Yeah, we were simply not quick enough at this time, so I could make a little bit of a battle with Rosberg against the lap time, but actually I never raced anyone from the start. So we're firmly in that 3rd group at this moment in time, and obviously we want to get back in the 2nd group and then can try and stay on the lead lap.
Thanks, David.
Interestingly, looking at the computer here, that Michael Schumacher, I mentioned a moment ago that Jacques Villeneuve was the next car they were going to catch, and he was just over 5.5 seconds in front of them when I said it. Well, he's now 6.2 seconds in front of them. Michael Schumacher is just pegging the gap to Villeneuve, running at the same pace as the French-Canadian, so he won't catch him. So that the very thing you were talking about, Martin, a back marker affecting the outcome, is trying to stop that from happening.
Yeah, that's a good point. As they're not actually lapping on leader's pace, although they're leading the race, of course they're going to catch less back markers, aren't they? Especially as we've just got the 16 runners, 6 cars out. Coulthard drive shaft, Sato, don't really know, Klein hydraulics, Ide front suspension problems. Truly gear shift problem. Alba's upside down on the first lap. And a lot of those cars that we've just mentioned who have retired may well have been the back markers also they would have caught. So it's looking pretty good for Michael Schumacher at the moment, unless Alonso can just hustle him off the road somewhere. But as we keep saying, why would he take that risk?
Yeah, 17 points ahead in the World Championship at the moment. It'll be 15 ahead of Michael Schumacher if it finishes like this. And it'll be 19 in Alonso's favour if he finds a way past him. That's the equation. It's fairly early in the season. This is race 4 of 18. It was due to be 19 this year, but the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa was cancelled until September because we now have an 11th team in Formula 1, Super Aguri. There weren't enough pit garages at Spa, and the facilities generally were not good enough, so they've gone away to do some work on that place ahead of next year's race. I know it's one of your favourites. Many of you responded to the FIA survey last year and said Spa was right up there amongst your favourites. Well, don't worry, it will be back, we understand, next year. Talking of number of teams in Formula 1, Jean Alesi was saying yesterday that he's still working very hard to get an entry for next year. They'll be announcing, the FIA will announce who the 12th team is for the 2008 season next week, and everybody tipping it to be David Richards, former boss of Benetton back in the 90s, and more recently BAR Honda. Well, Alesi hasn't been favoured with the entry, we understand, this time round, but he's hoping to get a team out next year, possibly a McLaren B team, using the old McLaren factory in Woking, with the main team having moved on to their wonderful new facility down there. It's a great facility for them. If they can, if Alesi and his boys can get the money and the resources together, we will see. 6 to go here at Imola. Ted Kravitz has something for us.
I just picked up a nice bit of information from the Renault garage. I went in there saying, come on, what's going on? Surely Fernando hasn't settled for second position. They say, no, he's still pushing, and they say, we anticipate a very exciting final 5 laps. So, well, guys, I mean, is he saving some revs in this engine? Is he saving everything for a last lap assault? We'll find out.
Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great?
The problem, at a great risk of stating the obvious, is if you arrive in the corner, say 10 metres behind the car in front of you, you've got a car that's 5 metres long, 1.8 metres wide. If the braking zone is only 80 metres long, you've got to be something like 20% better on the brakes to pass him. And, well, there's no way is our two competitive Formula 1 cars 20% better than the other in the braking zone. Also, when you're in a hairpin, the guy in front is always going to be on the throttle, a car length ahead of you. And these things go from standstill to 100 miles an hour and back to standstill in 6 seconds, such as their performance. So if he's a car length ahead of you before he treads on, as he treads on the throttle pedal, he's always going to be scampering off down the road. And that's why you get this concertina effect and the frustration that Alonso has at the moment.
Yeah, meanwhile, there has been a lot of brake dust coming out of Alonso's wheels in the last few laps anyway, so it's far from clear whether he has the brakes to do the job, even if he wanted to. Little swirly move up the inside, and Michael Schumacher just distracting him again. A reasonable crowd here this weekend. This race has coincided with Easter on a couple of occasions in the last few years, and that's really hammered the crowd. Also, high ticket prices, but today it was £30 for general admission, even though if it was 300 quid for a grandstand seat. And well, they seem to have got a fair number of people into the place. Well, Michael Schumacher was saying that these next few races are when he'll make a decision about whether to continue racing in Formula 1 in 2007. Between now and Silverstone, really, he'll take his view based on the extent to which Ferrari are able to react to the performance of Renault, particularly this year, and build him a car that can really challenge for wins in the World Championship. Certainly on the evidence of this weekend, they've taken a good step forward. But is it enough to get him into the championship hunt on different venues? Imola, always a great Ferrari Bridgestone circuit. What will be the story at Nürburgring in a couple of weeks' time, and the week after that at Barcelona, where the Renault has been doing some stunning times in testing? We will see.
Well, Michael's tended to be very strong in the Nürburgring, hasn't he? Designed half the track himself, so it very much suits his driving style. And if he can get away with it, well, why not? Oh, Alonso running very well. They just kept it out of the gravel. Got it a little bit tail happy in the middle of the Villeneuve chicane. Let's see how quickly now he closes Michael Schumacher back in. But if it's going to be a very exciting last 5 laps, well, 3 of them have just been wasted while he then has to get back into the hunt. But Well, Rosberg went off there just before qualifying, didn't he, and got on the gravel and just smashed straight into the wall. There's nowhere to go there. It dropped the back end just as he was about to ride over the curb, and it nearly spat the car clean off the racetrack.
As you say, let's see how long it takes him to get back onto the tail of Michael Schumacher, having lost all that time. That's the top 8 at the moment. Fisichella, having started in 11th place on the grid. Let's have another look at it.
Yeah. I almost wondered if that was a different camera angle. It was the same incident. What we were missing there is the sort of slightly violent bit in the middle where it went askew. And, well, is that it? Is that Alonso settling for second now because he's falling further behind? What sent him off the road like that? But suddenly, Michael Schumacher has got some breathing space. He's down into the 125s. The crowd now sensing he's got the job done.
Yeah. They love it as well. It's been a bit of a drought. It's been 18 months since Ferrari and Bridgestone have beaten Renault, McLaren and Michelin in a Grand Prix. That sole victory at Indianapolis last year in very controversial circumstances for Schumacher and Ferrari. Only the Bridgestone runners taking part that day. 18 months ago, Suzuka 2004, the last time that they beat them. And this is going to be a sweet moment for them. And for Michael Schumacher, he's still got 3 laps to go here, and it does look as though Alonso is not going to get close enough to him to have a crack at the end.
Alonso losing Alonso losing the back end again in Acqua Minerale, and I suspect that could be game, set and match for Michael Schumacher now. Alonso will realise he just doesn't appear to have the grip. He's been squirreling around, hasn't he, in the turbulent air of that Ferrari for, what, 30 laps now? And although he's had a set of tyres changed in that period of time, but suddenly that Renault has become very pointy indeed.
So what exactly is the problem then? Why is he flying off the road a couple of times?
It looks to me as if the rear tyres are just giving up a little bit, and it's and especially as you keep running wide, you pick up dirt in the tyres. Takes you a couple of laps, and it just takes you a couple of laps to get the thing underneath you again, and a confidence as to where the car really is and why it let go on you. So Alonso then, it looks okay. I don't think he's got a major problem, but he suddenly made 2 errors in 2 laps, and they're both straight into the 125s. Michael had a little bit in his pocket in case there was a final charge from Alonso, but he's kind of ruined that.
Well, you would have put your house on Alonso winning this Grand Prix in the run-up to the second round of pit stops. He was so much faster than Michael Schumacher. He had plenty of fuel in the car to go further than him. Schumacher was very, very slow. They were getting backed up towards the rest of the field. Renault made a tactical switch, and it didn't work for them. And that was the turning point of this Grand Prix. And, well, there'll be an awful lot of talk, I'm sure, with Steve and Mark Blundell, and they'll be finding out exactly what that was all about after this Grand Prix, so stick with us for that. And also you can follow the story later on the ITV F1 website as well, because that for sure is the story of the 2006 San Marino Grand Prix.
Now there is a back marker looming up, but Alonso's put himself out of position now. He's not going to be able to try and make use of it. That's the problem with those little mistakes. But if Renault could have gone further, you'd have to say it was a mistake, because Ferrari were, even though Massa was in the pits, they had a half a lap to get themselves prepared. I don't think they were expecting Michael that lap, because I was looking out the window as you're talking, and the mechanics were rushing around like crazy. I think it was quite a last-minute decision to bring Michael in, and Ferrari were only ever going to react to what we think was an early stop by Alonso and just cover him off, and that's what they did.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe he was a lap or two earlier than scheduled. It was certainly in his pit stop window, but maybe they did, that's right, react to and bring him in, and in which case the fact that Schumacher had a good in-lap, better than Renault had expected, and the fact that Alonso came out in traffic was enough to turn this Grand Prix for him in Michael Schumacher's favour and send him on his way to his 85th, count them, 85th career victory.
It's been an afternoon of disappointment for a lot of people. Button down in 7th from the front row of the grid after that fuel rig problem, but he was 3-stopping and wasn't going to be up with these boys anyway on that strategy. Fisichella's gone from 11th to 8th in the sister Renault, which is pretty unspectacular, you'd have to say. The only man really outperforming his car, I think, out there's Mark Webber in 6th place for Williams, also on Bridgestone tyres, of course, but a lot of lacklustre performances, I think.
So Michael Schumacher has done it on home soil for Ferrari. He has won the San Marino Grand Prix to put to an end a very, very long losing streak for him and Ferrari, to put to an end Renault's winning streak. They are beaten for the first time in 2006. Juan Montoya gets a podium in third place for McLaren. Massa is fourth for Ferrari. Raikkonen is fifth for McLaren. Then it'll be Webber, Jensen, Button, who certainly would have been on the podium, but for that pit stop problem he had, second time in a pit stop. And then eighth will be Giancarlo Fisichella. It's win number 85 then for Michael Schumacher. And that's a sweet moment for him, having taken the record yesterday away from the late great Ayrton Senna of all-time pole positions. He's way ahead of anybody else in all-time victories. A smile from Flavio Briatore on the wall, and not too much lost really for Renault today. Schumacher's only taken 2 points out of Alonso's 17-point as it was lead over him.
Okay, Michael, we're on TV. Well done. That was a fantastic drive. Fantastic drive, Michael. Well done.
Yes, he won that race in qualifying, really, didn't he? Got off the line well.
Yeah, in qualifying and at the start, Alonso gave him a really, really hard time, and it'll be very, very interesting to find out what happened in that middle part of the Grand Prix around the pit stops, because that was Alonso's race to lose in the middle part of this Grand Prix, and lose it he did. He's not used to that.
Third, fourth and fifth covered by just 1.6 seconds. Didn't get to see too much of that because we were watching the Schumacher-Alonso thing, but Montoya just hanging on ahead of Massa in the second Ferrari. Raikkonen then had a good pace at the end of the Grand Prix and couldn't really use it too well. Webber solid for sixth, Button seventh, Fisichella getting the last point.
So, a number of strong performances here this afternoon. Who's your driver of the day?
I don't think there is one. Am I allowed to not have a driver of the day? Because there's nobody out there that really...
I did a pretty good job on the way into the track this morning, I have to say, under my normal best.
No, I'm not going to give anybody the driver of the day. There's nothing out there that really stands out today, I think.
That's a replay of Schumacher crossing the line, the clenched fist of victory. A reminder of happier times with him. An amazing sequence of success, 5 consecutive Drivers' World Championships for Ferrari. Is this the beginning of the glory days coming back again? Or is this a case of Imola? Always a Ferrari stronghold, always a Bridgestone stronghold, and really the pace of Renault, when it mattered, showing that they are just as quick, if not quicker, around here. Ferrari's pace dropped off amazingly in the middle part of this Grand Prix, but the experience and brilliance of Michael Schumacher was enough to keep him in front of Alonso. Montoya finishing third, as you see, and well, can Ferrari keep this going? That's the question.
Taking a bit out of Renault, haven't they, in the constructors? That'll come up shortly, no doubt about it. Villeneuve slipped back down to 12th. He was doing okay for a while, so 12th and 13th for BMW. Their poorest showing this year, actually, isn't it? They've been quite strong and looking, especially Heidfeld's been moving forward, but they've been nowhere today. Losing speed, 14th and 15th for Toro Rosso. Montero bringing up the rear. 6 retirements. No engine failures today, or through the weekend.
Amazing. We're only 4 races into the World Championship with brand new V8 configuration engines. And after the chaos in Malaysia, where everyone was losing engines left, right and centre on Saturday and Sunday, here we are in Imola on a hot day, and we haven't lost any. That's the driver's situation. Then Schumacher moving ahead of Raikkonen and Fisichella into second place, a clear second place, then 21 points. Raikkonen third, Fisichella fourth. Montoya moves up to fifth with that podium today. Button moves down from a share of second to sixth. He's the big loser today. Webber is on 9th, and I'd give him a shout for driver of the day. Started 10th on the grid, drove very well, and finished in 6th place here this afternoon. He needs days like this to underline his quality, to keep himself at the sharp end of the grid when all the driver contracts are coming up to at the end of this season. A good strong run from Webber as they come into Parc Fermé, and we'll see the encounter between Schumacher and Alonso after a really spirited fight between the two of them. Jean Todt there. 81 Grand Prix victories now to his credit. It's been an amazing run for Todt. The most successful era in Ferrari's history. Schumacher always wants to pay back the mechanics, particularly after a race like Australia where he stuck it in the wall. He always feels it badly, feels like he's let the mechanics down. He wants to go out straight away and try and pay them back with a win like today.
Quite a slow pace in the race, shows you the V8s have really been knocked back. They're 3 seconds slower than last year's fastest lap, roughly. And of course last year they had to use 1 set of tyres for the entire distance. This year it'll be 3 sets of tyres. So for the first time in many a year, James, we've really seen a significant, a much more slow Grand Prix, much more slower pace.
Everybody loving this. Massa there. He finished in 4th place, teammate to Schumacher. Just getting his congratulations. Herbie Blash, the assistant race director, providing some information for Michael that he wants to know as they head up towards the podium.
I don't understand why they don't all paint up those hands divisors and put sponsors on them. It seems like a wasted opportunity there. Fisichella's one is all pimped up, but the others just seems to cover up the sponsorship, doesn't it? I'm surprised the marketing people haven't seized the high ground on the hands devices that go around the drivers' necks.
Well, it's not quite the sort of scenes we've seen in the past with the crowd pouring onto the track. Still a reasonable crowd here today. Just looking again at the final stage of this Grand Prix. A few of them are running up now to get themselves underneath the podium. Ferrari have their own grandstand here. They are we're just about 40 minutes away drive from the Ferrari factory. And there on the left is Luca Di Montezemolo, the president of Ferrari and Fiat. And there on the right is Rod Nelson, race engineer of Alonso and Flavio Briatore. Contrasting expressions.
Yeah, Rod Nelson's face looked pained, didn't it? And I think they know they could have won today's race with that very poor middle sector of the Grand Prix.
Should have won this race. Undoubtedly should have won this race. It's, I mean, all credit to Ferrari and Schumacher, but Renault, well, was there for the taking, wasn't it? Schumacher then on his 15th visit to the San Marino Grand Prix. He's getting close to being the man who started an individual Grand Prix the most times of anybody. Riccardo Patrese was around for 17 years. But when we get to Japan later this year, I think it'll be Michael Schumacher's 17th visit there. So he's definitely looking at taking another record as well. The Tifosi pouring onto the track. Lots of Schumacher caps in there. And there's the winner. Trademark leap coming up. Italian national anthem for Ferrari rings out around Imola. First time this season that Renault have been beaten. 7th winner's trophy here at Imola for Michael Schumacher. Tremendous record around this place. There's Todd. 214 Grand Prix he's been in charge now. This is win number 81. Let's have a look at Alonso's expression. He knows, doesn't he? He knows it was his. And Montoya, good to see him up there. Good to see him having shaded Raikkonen as well. A lot of people sort of writing him off, really, and talking all about what Raikkonen's going to do next year. But Montoya here underlining that he could beat him on his day.
Yeah, it was difficult to really gauge that pack, wasn't it? We were so closely involved in watching Schumacher fending off Alonso. We didn't really get to see the good scrap between Montoya, Massa and Raikkonen. The two McLarens coming through in the end, but I think they'll be disappointed to still be 17 seconds off the pace, and there having been a lot of time lost in Michael's middle sector of the Grand Prix. Champagne gets sprayed, everybody gets sticky. It's a horrible feeling, and they're already supremely thirsty as well. But Schumacher, a happy man once again.
Indeed he is, and the key question now is, was this an Imola flash in the pan, or can Ferrari keep the momentum going? Nürburgring in 2 weeks' time.